This is That One Audition with Alyshia Ochse. I'm excited for whatever you're getting ready to say.
Well, my agent says this thing to me, as I always call him, and I'm like, why aren't I working? And or I'm in tears, why aren't I working?
Right.
He always says, I've been with the same agent for like 20 plus years. And he always says to me, your life can change with a phone call.
Always.
One phone call. And I hate it, and then I love it at the same time. Hold it, I'm putting down my window.
No problem. There.
On my other window, because I can hear Angel screaming in the other side. Angel is the super that works runs like 4 buildings on our street, and he's not happy about
something he's running around with. I'm so excited. I'm so excited to do this because we were supposed to do this, I think, last year when you were doing your other show, and then things got moved around. So I'm so excited just to sit and be able to dive deep with you for this time that we have, because a 26-year career, Leslie, it's been like, I've been following your career for a very long time. Isn't it crazy? Does it feel like it's been 26 years? I mean, you started so young, and that's where I love starting at the beginning.
Yeah, it's 26.
Yeah. From the time of your actually working, from like things like coming out.
I feel like it might be even longer.
Well, I mean, I know you've talked about this in press a million times, but I have a specific question. You're the youngest of 4 girls. Yeah. And your mom sent in the pictures to Oprah when you were 16.
Yeah.
Were all the other girls gone? And it
was just me at home. They were all gone. There's a big age gap between us. There's 15 years for my eldest sister, and then 8 years between the next one, and then 4 years between my sister Kim, whom I'm so close with. But yeah, everybody was gone. I was the only one in the house.
And were you wanting to get into modeling, or were you wanting to get into acting? Because I wanted
models.
This is why I wanted to talk to you, because I wanted to act, and I was in Kentucky, and my mom didn't know what to do with me, so she put me in modeling. I'm like, I want to. But it was before, not to date us, but it was before internet, and like, I want to be an actor. What do I do?
No, it's like there was nothing. I didn't even know I wanted to be an actor. If I'm being really honest, I thought I grew up around politics a lot. My mom ran campaigns and worked in local politics and worked in local government. And then she worked specifically, there was this one ticket that came through Virginia, and it was the first time a woman, a Black man, and a white man had ever ran on a ticket for governor, lieutenant governor, and attorney general. And my mother, I don't know if she was Mary Sue Terry's like right-hand person, but she was always on the campaign trail with her. And everywhere Mary Sue went, my mother went. And they didn't, in Virginia, it's so strange. You don't run as a ticket. So you can have a Democratic governor, a Republican lieutenant governor, which is crazy, because you're like, I don't even know how anything would get done if you weren't all on the same party, especially now in politics. Mm-hmm. So my mom worked with Mary Sue, and then I remember Jerry Beliles, who was the governor, was this really incredible man, said to my mom, you should put in an application to be the director of consumer affairs. They're looking to fill that spot. My mom, did not graduate. She'd taken night classes, but she'd never graduated from college. And she was like, I don't know. She got the job. I'm sure her political ties helped, but she got the job. And I remember when she got the job, this is what I loved about my mother so much, was she didn't really know anything. She was like, consumer affairs? What's consumer affairs? And Virginia at the time was like 48 out of 50. in like consumer advocacy. And I think within 5 years, she'd taken it to the #1 state or top 5. And she was writing bills and changing, like, I remember she had this, like, the lemon law, like if you bought a car and it was a lemon, like all these like consumer advocacy, like laws. And so I would always go to political functions. Like I was just a kid, you know, my mom was sort of the most, she was the strongest person I knew, you know? And so I'd always wanted to be around her. And so I would go anywhere with her, but that was like me as a child, like anywhere adults were, I always was like, what are they saying? What are they saying?
Yeah.
And so I would go to like political functions with her. And so I just thought I would do something like that. And my biggest thing was like, get into UVA and then I'll be a lawyer and then I'll go into politics.
That's what I was wondering. Cause when I was like, what did she go to? Cause then you left after a semester.
I was there a semester. So I won this contest on Oprah Winfrey when I was 16. And I came to New York and then like I went to Japan that summer. And I don't know, I was from Virginia, but we didn't have like, I didn't come from money. So it wasn't like I was like, you know, going to France in the summer or doing anything. Like we were cosmopolitan, like, you know, we were country folk. And, you know, Florida was a big deal if you went on vacation, you know?
Yes.
We went to Disney World. I mean, we could never get into Disney World. Every time we try to get in, or Disneyland or whatever, it was always packed. It was like 2 books. So we'd be like, we're going to go across the street to SeaWorld. But so I never really traveled until when I came to New York, when I won this contest on Oprah. I mean, like being a model, like what does that even mean? It didn't even have like I remember just doing research with my mom and we're like, oh, it's the only profession where women make more money than men outside of prostitution, which is sound super interesting at that time. And so I went to New York. I had to go by myself.
You did the modeling thing for a sec. When did you decide to pivot from modeling? I know you went back and forth a couple of times, but from the modeling into going to Will Esper Studios.
I didn't really pivot out. I went to New York. I started modeling. I knew very quickly, like, I'm not the prettiest girl in the room. I think I'm fun and have a good personality. And I'd always sort of get on jobs because they're like, let's take Leslie. She'll be a hoot on the catalog shoot in Miami, you know, or she's fun. She's the every girl, you know, something. But like, I knew I wasn't like gonna be like on the runways of Paris or something. And also I think I knew pretty quickly that it felt like a means to an end. And I got a commercial pretty fast. I think when I must have been like 18, within like 6 months of moving to New York, I got this commercial for Lee Jeans, this director Tarsem, who had done the Losing My Religion video. And
oh yeah.
And he was kind of this hot director who's winning all of these awards. He did this Lee Jeans commercial and they picked a male model and a female model and they sort of followed them around. And the whole concept of the ad campaign was Lee Jeans will make you look like a model, just don't think like one. And we improvised. I didn't know what improvisation was. He just said, pretend you're like a dopey, airheaded, like supermodel. So for 5 days, I just got to pretend to be this person, whoever I thought she was in my head. And from that, my phones, I guess, like my commercial agent did like, come in and audition for this or come in. And then I was like, I need to go to school. Like there's something in here that felt right. So I was dating a guy who was going to William Esper and I did their summer intensive, like when I was 18, that first year. And then I started studying with Maggie Flanagan. Mm-hmm. And I did that like into my 19th year. And I remember being in her class and I was kind of the youngest one. And she kept saying, your experiences, your life, what things that bring you to life separate you from every other actor. And I just remember thinking, and the class I was in didn't feel quite like the right energy. Like there was some girls in the class who weren't so nice, and it was just like a little, and I had the wherewithal to take A and B and go, I think I will excel maybe with a different class environment, but also with a little bit life experience. And I remember going to Maggie and saying, can I take a year off? I want to go to Europe. I'll never have this again. I want to go to Europe. And I was already in that first year with her. Like I had to leave to go to like LA to do a pilot. And I was like, I feel like things are happening and they're happening fast and I'm not prepared. And I want to have a foundation. So I want to finish school. But I also want to have an experience. And I don't think I'll ever be able to go live in Europe for 3 or 4 months and have this. So she was really great. Like she, I think, saw that I was talented and said yes. And I went thinking I would stay longer. And then I really missed acting. And I was like, I don't know how many times I can't read Jitterbug Perfume anymore. I can't read I was like,
right.
Books. I was like, I'm not going to take photos. I'm just going to write in my journal and like read books. And then I was there and I missed New York and I missed school. I missed that foundation.
Yeah.
So I came back and I think I studied at other studios, did classes, and then came back into the second year. So like when I was 20 into 21, sorry.
Mm-hmm. No, you're good.
I don't know how to turn off. How do I turn off?
I just like to say whenever it dings that's like affirming whatever you just said, because since I switched over to Zoom 2 years ago, when I do interviews, I'm like, yes, hallelujah. It's in the background being like,
there's a way to do it where you can tell everyone to shut up and not do it. I don't know how to do it. So an angel gets its wings and the world is saying amen.
Amen to what you're saying. So talk me through. So when you finally did go back and you did 3 years there, did you guys have a showcase?
We did 2 years. I'm going to hear a crazy story. So my partner, his best friend, Sam also studied at the same school I studied.
I thought so. I was wondering if you guys met there.
Never. Oh. I think when I don't know if it was my summer intensive, he was just finishing when I was doing a summer intensive there, or he was a second year when I was a first year, but we never met. And his best friend, Ivan Martin, he took my spot in my class when I dropped out from my first year when I went to Europe. Ivan took my spot in Maggie's class, which I find so crazy.
It's just meant to be like you guys were circling until you collected.
Yeah. Pretty wild. And then I went back, I did a second year, and then Maggie invited some of us to do like another sort of like intensive workshop. So it was like really like 3 years total between the summer intensive and then Maggie inviting us to do a little bit longer. So I think on and off, and then you take all this other, when you're taking class like that and you're not going to like Rutgers or Yale or something, I think you have to work harder because you're doing it at night when you have like, modeling became my bartending job. I
was just going to say, you have a main job. You're trying to supplement your other. Yeah. It's like, how much time do you have in a day?
Yeah. And so you're taking class at night. And so in a weird way, I kind of feel like you really want it more than you really, you're hungry.
So hungry. And I'm wondering at the very end of it, because I know that Bill's told so many people that I've interviewed that like, you're going to be great in like 10 to 15 years. Did you get that same kind of theory in graduating out of it? Because you started working immediately. So I almost wonder because it wasn't the thing that you grew up being like, I want to be an actor, since it kind of came to you out of osmosis or things just kind of happened naturally. If that attitude of, this is interesting, this is just kind of happening, that was the magnet, right? Or if it was this training.
Isn't that it's sort of an interesting concept. Can we hold on? I'm going to lift.
Pause, yeah.
I feel like I'm like, to go back.
Yep.
I don't know. I don't know if it's just, I was so young and I just sort of was just staying on my front foot. I don't know if I just didn't know better.
Which is part of like the zest of it landing and acting as a younger person and just kind of swinging for it and not being so attached to an outcome. Right. So listen,
I'm ambitious and I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but like, I knew I wanted it. And I don't think I ever thought of it not working out. I think because I didn't go to college, I was like, and then I started modeling so young that I remember at like 22 or 24, I remember thinking, well, you've never had a real job. The last job you had was babysitting. So you better make it work. Like, just like in my head, like, you go to college, get your shit together, make it work. I also am, like, if there's ever like a class, like I just did a Shakespeare class.
You're still learning.
Like, yeah. So I'm still like my best friend, this actress, Piper Perabo, she was like, sis, because she studied at Maggie Flanagan as well. And she was like, sis, there's a Shakespeare class. And I was like, I'm terrified of Shakespeare. What the hell is iambic pentameter? So she's like, let's do it. So we did a Shakespeare class. She worked on Iago. I did a Hamlet soliloquy. It was like so fun. But I have to be honest, I think the reason I got the job I just got was because I did that class.
Yep.
Because I think when you go back to class, that you just get reminded. I mean, I was in class, I was so scared. I hadn't been in a class. And the last time I got this other Netflix show. I'd done Maggie came in, she doesn't teach anymore, but she came in to do an intensive and like this 6-week scene study class, which was really terrifying to go back to class with your teacher who used to like scare the shit out of you. And now I guess we're friends and I adore her. And to work on scenes, but to work on scenes after being on sets and having experience, and then also to realize like, oh, you forgot to do this, you forgot to, like, it was just wildly interesting and illuminating, and to work on great material. And then to go back, and I remember I auditioned for this Netflix show that it's called Jupiter's Legacy. And I just remember because before pandemic, I hated self-taping. So I would always make my agent call a casting director who liked me and ask them if they could help me and put me on tape, even if they were casting. And so I went in and this casting director put me on tape. And I remember she said, you're really in a pocket right now. I remember she said that. And I said, I think it's because I did this class. And she said, 100%. She's like, I think you're going to get this job. Because, I mean, I think that casting directors are really, I love them. I know people go, they hate them. Another really, like one of my dear friends is like an incredible, very high-end casting director. And she does it when if I'm in LA, I'm like, Denise, can you put me on tape? And she's like, yes. So I come in because they're very good at their job.
Yes.
They don't suffer fools. And if you come in unprepared, then you deserve not to be liked by them.
Well, I'm so curious because it is called That One Audition. And I usually ask at the end, but I'm loving how this is going. In that class, in that 6 weeks, what were a couple of tangible things that you got reminded of that got you back in the pocket?
Here's the other thing I will say. Also too, I did another class with her and I got a movie right after. I remember I was doing another like intensive with Maggie and I got TAG. I remember TAG came out of that. And I was like, and I had to fake an abortion. I had to go in and there's a thing, if you haven't seen TAG, well, the spoiler alert, it's over. But like my character is has to have it, like convince these people that she's not having an abortion. She's miscarriaging. Sorry, wrong use of words. Too much political stuff in my head right now.
I know, right?
I just marched on Saturday, which felt really good to march. Just to
Yeah, I know. Yes.
But I remember I went in for that, and I was with the same casting director who had helped me with the other job. She said to me, she was like, and she said it on this, I think you're going to get this job. She's like, this is, because I think it just reminds you of stakes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like just in this, gosh, I hope that didn't sound like I was being like, and this job I got, and this job I got.
No, I mean, people listen to this because they're learning lessons, right? So a big part of it, it's like going back to class. Or people going into theater for 2, 3, 4 months, you're back into a muscle. Yeah. So then it's like you're Michael Jordan, right? You're dribbling a lot. And then all of a sudden you make a move and you're like, I didn't even know I did that. I just was practicing.
It's true. It's a muscle that you do. And I think every time I take a class, I can see the reward, and I have the fortune of living in New York. And so there are incredible teachers here. So, to get to have that. And I have an incredible acting coach that I work with on every project. And so I don't do any job without breaking my script with my acting coach.
Thank you for saying that. I interviewed Terry Knickerbocker.
You did?
Yeah, a year and a half ago, or at the top of COVID, and he actually talked about. That's okay.
That's ruining everything. Hey, look, come here. Hold, please.
No, you're so good. But the one thing that when Terry and I were talking, he's like, it's so interesting to me, contemporary artists that won't say that they work with somebody, when I think, and I do the same, and I coach as well. And I'm like, it's like playing a game of tennis. You've warmed up, you've done, now go play with somebody that can help shape or move the ball over here. Try this. It's so nice to have a game to play with somebody.
I call it a toolbox.
Yes.
I say my job as an actor, I remember Maggie said this in class, your job as an actor is to come with 20 ideas. Not 1, 20. Because if a scene is about listening and responding, you don't know what that person's going to do. So if they go left, you have to be fast on it. It may not be like the way you thought the scene was going to go. Mm-hmm. And you have to sort of check your ego, and you have to play ball. It's tennis. It's what you're saying, we're passing, we're dribbling. And so Terry does the same thing. I mean, everything, like just, you have to fill the toolbox, go in. I got all the drills. I got a Phillips head. I got a flat. I got a hammer. I got a mallet. What do you need? What do you need
for this specific role and this project?
And everything. And I don't know. And yeah, I think it's interesting, people who don't so Sam studies with Terry as well. And I just can't imagine starting a job. It gives me anxiety. It's
not talked it out even with somebody.
No, it's like, to me, like going to set memorize. It's like, you would do what? What would you do? To answer something you asked, about class, and that the Shakespeare teacher was just saying something, and he said, I think, Shakespeare's like the best. It's the best writing. It's so juicy. I mean, it's scary, but when you really learn how you can break it down, it's really like high drama. I mean, he wrote it for the people. It's for the people.
Right.
And he said, if you can take everything we learn about how to break down Shakespeare and just apply it to your Law and Order, SVU, 1 episode audition, because that's what I think those writers in that writer's room think I don't think they go to work and go, I'm writing crap.
I'm writing this exposition scene and go have fun with it.
Yeah. And honestly, when you're actually the guest star on a show like that, I always think they give you the more fun part. I think it's like, You're not one of the cops being like, mar, 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 mar. But even if you are the cop just saying, this is what happened, this is what happened, like, what was the day you had? Where are you coming from? Did you get in a fight with your wife that day? Did you get a flat tire? How is that like, there's all of these things that you can elevate everything and make it more interesting, because and it's hard because then you go in and everybody's like, shooting so fast. But I think I have a lot of pride about acting, and I'm so grateful I get to do.
I mean,
the
resume, the build upon that you've been able to, the building of the house that you've been able to do for your career, it's outstanding. It's interesting to see also. I'm really curious about earlier in your career, because I know when we start careers, a lot of people are like, I don't want to be typecast. Well, you'd rather be typecast than not cast, one. And it's interesting that once you get going, right? So it felt like when I'm researching you, you were like in crime and drama world. It just kind of seemed to happen that way. And then I feel like Talladega Nights, boom, we're off to the races in comedy. But I'm curious, that transition, was that a conscious transition where you're like, I really want to do comedy and nobody's letting me do it? How did you even get that audition?
My agent said there, I think because I was like, came from Southern. I mean, I just think it was, again, I go back to, I remember Molly Shannon said, she was like, where did you study improv?
That's what I wanted to know. Did you study improv before?
I said, I didn't study improv. And Sam and I were talking about it later. And I said to him, I was recounting the story to him. And he said, you did study improv. It's the basis of like Esper's, it's Meisner, listening and responding. You stay in yes. You listen and respond honestly in the moment. It's everything. Meisner, to me, like when young actors are like, where should I study? I am such like a devotee to the Meisner technique. I think it's so healthy for your brain, like, because I don't have to stay in character all the time. Sometimes I do, but I don't have to stay in character all the time. But I have a foundation. It's just like tactical training. Mm-hmm. And I think that for sure, all of that first year, coming to the door, knocking, all of that stuff that seems, you were like, what am I doing? Why am I knocking?
Like, why am I in a tree for 6 months?
Why am I repeating? Why am I going, no, you, and then suddenly someone's in tears, but like all of that stuff, I think, was the foundation for being able to do Talladega.
Well, not only that, look at the lead genes. When you said it earlier in the interview, we were like, I just had to go like improv around. I'm like, oh, how interesting.
I didn't know what it was.
But you did it for 5 days. And then, so it doesn't seem.
Did you have a strong imagination as a kid?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Do you come from girls? Yes. Do you come from all girls? Do you have sisters?
Yes. It's just me and my sister. Yes. Yeah.
Now, were you close in age or far apart in age?
3 years. 3 years.
So were you guys partners in crime, or were you like?
No, we were opposite. We were so opposite. And I always wanted a sibling, somebody to kind of rival with. So I made it up in my head, like I had a hallway of mirrors. So there was 100 of me when I was 5. I'm like, oh, I do this. They move. Oh, this is interesting. So my imagination was the thing that kind of took me to other places.
Forward to, like, yeah. I think that curiosity and that imagination, like unknowingly, is what starts revving the engine.
Yes.
And, and I was an extroverted child, but I think that really just came because I was lonely. My father died really young, and my mom was working, and my sisters did not
in the world. Yeah.
Didn't want to deal with me. So I didn't have a lot, and I was in the country, and I just remember always being quite fascinated with older people, like just feeling like, hold on, I'm turning off this thing, maybe hoping that will help it. I remember being fascinated with stories of older people, being around them, listening, just like listening was something that was very queued up, listening to what they were doing, thinking like, can I, and it felt fun, like, I guess because I was so lonely, to sort of like, you know, if I could make them laugh or I could do something, they became like a partner in crime. Like, you know, we had like we lived up on this like hill, and my Aunt Jenny and Uncle Robert had a nursing home down below our house. Like I could walk past our pine trees and get down there. And I was laughing with my Aunt Ruby. I think she just turned 92 or 93. We were on the phone and I said, we started talking about my Aunt Jenny. She was like the greatest. And I said, I used to go down to that nursing home, and I had like, these people were just like, I had them cornered. I had an audience. I would go play the organ for them. I couldn't play the organ. I would like do cartwheels for them. I was like, but they were so happy that I was just running around that old folks home, which would never happen now, but I would just like run around and I would talk to them and they would tell me stories. But I don't know. It just felt like, I think something in that hatched in me. Like I remember watching a documentary on like Carol Burnett. And I grew up watching the Carol Burnett show thinking it was a show in the 80s, not knowing it was a show from like the 60s. And being like, what? Like I thought that was happening. Like that was, even though clearly her style was so different than the Tracy Ullman show, which was also happening at the same time. But in my mind, these like women in comedy. So I think that was like,
that was infused. Well, I'm so curious, like once this, because you do blossom in this way, I would love to hear the audition for Talladega Nights. And then did you audition for God's Favorite Idiot?
Okay.
Because I would love to hear the difference, because we've got like Melissa McCarthy, we got Comedy's Changed, right? We've got Will Ferrell over here, Talladega Nights. It's 12, 14 years ago, I think, where we're at, maybe a little bit. Yeah, Jesus, that's crazy. And that audition process and understanding that tonally, and then where we are now.
I think with Talladega, I got the audition.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I think is it Allison? I think it's Allison. No, she
Allison Jones that cast it?
Jones. Yeah, I think Allison Jones cast it. I don't know. You know what? I think I came in and auditioned for Allison. I don't remember the audition for Allison. I think I came in and auditioned for Allison, and then I got called back, and I think McKay was in the room. So I remember doing that audition with McKay.
And it's online, and it seems, at least
that's the third audition.
I was going to say, because it seems like
that's
a lot of improv. Okay.
So, but McKay is throwing improv. I can remember the room. I can definitely remember the room, being in this room for the second audition. And not really like, I knew I had an idea of Carly Bobby. Like I knew what I wanted for her. I had like, I don't know. I just sort of saw her in my, sometimes I don't think every part is for every person.
I couldn't agree more. What is will find you.
Yeah. And so like, I read this and I was like, I knew this woman thinks she is the star of her own country and Western love song. She, I just sort of knew. And so between like the first audition to the second audition was different, but the second audition to the third audition with Will, when I had to go and read with Will, and there was like, I don't know how many of us were going to do that. I was scared. I remember I'm the cuckoo bird that I usually don't talk a lot when I'm on an audition, which I'm sure people think is me being like trying to give like some ice or something. It's just because inside I'm so nervous that I'm trying to conserve all my energy, and so it's for the room. But I remember I walked in and I was like, I'm going to shit my pants. I'm so scared. And I went to a wall and I laid down and I put my feet up on the wall, because in yoga, it's like a restorative position and it gets you back in your body. And I remember doing that before the audition. So I was like, you have to get in your body. you're shaking. And I had seen, there was this show on, I think it was on E! It was like Hugh Hefner and his like 3 girlfriends.
Oh, the bunny. Yes.
The bunny show. And there was one of them, I think her name's Holly. She always wore a pearl necklace. They're always like really big pearls. And it just struck me as interesting for this woman, because I imagined if you grow up, like this girl grew up in the South, and probably, you know, Carly Bobby did not grow up with like, she's like a Scarlett O'Hara. I'm never going to go hungry again. I'm not going to do this. She is very ambitious. She is going to use what she wants. She's really smart. You know, she's like a land baron too, you know, she's on top of like being the star of her own country love song. She's also like a land baron, and her property is Ricky Bobby, and she's going to protect it by, I mean, that's her hair, you know, that's her, what's the name of whatever that in Gone with the Wind? That's her land. That's her Tara. But I strung a necklace.
Did you make that? The necklace?
It was strung, like they're fake, but a pearl necklace, like with like gaudy pearls, because I thought that's classy. She's going to think that's classy. And it was like a choker. And then I had a cross on, because I always felt like I was close to Jesus. And then there was something about like, my mama probably told me, Jackie, this is what made Jackie Kennedy a lady, was her string of pearls. So they were just like kind of off, you know? And I remember being really young, and then like when I grew up in Nelson County, I remember being in like PE, and one of these girls in my PE class had like, they were all hickeys, but she had like a hickey pearl necklace around her neck. And I remember being like, no boy wanted to like kiss me when I was a kid. So I was like fascinated that we were in the same grade, and some boy like sex to me, I like, I just didn't understand it. Like I was like, so it wasn't like in my DNA of like sexuality or any of that. But I remember it looked like a pearl necklace. And I was like, I wonder if she feels like it's a pearl necklace. Like, and it just was like that thing.
Things were coming in.
Yeah. And then I was like, oh, she'll have a pearl. Like, I don't know. It's weird as like, you know, so I made this necklace, and I came in with a beer.
You came into the audition with a beer?
Yeah. I mean, I poured it out and it was water.
Yes.
Came in holding a beer. And I might've been chewing gum, which I made big choices. And I just thought, and it's Will Ferrell, and
you went toe to toe with him. I mean,
but they just sat there and they just went. So there's no sort of, I think with those guys, you just have to, I think I did a movie with the guys from the state, Ben Garant and Tom, and they're just like, you always stay in yes. Yeah. Whatever happens, you stay in yes. So even if I get scared, you use it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes.
If you shut down, it all dies. And so I think I was game. And I remember, I think I improvised something about my necklace.
You did. I watched it and I was like, this is genius. And the fact that you just told me you made it, I was like, even better.
Yeah. I improvised something. The necklace came in, and I improvised something about the necklace, I think. And after they stopped the tape, Adam said something about the necklace. And I said, this is her Jackie. Like I told him why. And I think they just saw like I was game, and I had a point of view. Yes. Yeah. And I think like, it's always the thing, like I'm starting this new job in like a week and a half, and I'm so scared right now, because I was saying to Terry, he's like, you look nervous. And I was like, I am nervous, Terry, because it's happening so fast. And I feel like I'm standing on the diving board, but I'm not bouncing. I'm
not there yet.
I'm not ready to do a jackknife. And I come in like insane. Like my scripts look like a serial killer. I mean, it's literally like Son of Sam, my script. So that job was like, very important. And I remember Adam said something that really impacted me. And when they were like, we were going to do this, sometimes I feel stupid talking because I'm like, what the hell do I know about acting? This is just my experience. But I will say that I thought this was an interesting piece that Adam said to me. It really stuck with me. He said, don't ever sit on an intention. Even if it's wrong, it could lead to something interesting, or it could lead to something beneficial for the scene.
So he said, don't sit on an intention. Okay.
Don't. And he said, even if it's wrong, it could inspire Will to come up with something, which will then have us stop and be like, hold on, maybe what's this? And I think that really not sitting on an intention is about being fearless.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really scary to do when I walk onto these sets with people. I've gotten really lucky. I walk into sets who are like way above my pay grade, way above like with who have awards on shelves and who are, and you have to go in, and I want to be deferential and I want to be, and then I have to not be. And it's scary. It's unnerving. And so you could, sometimes I'm like, do we want to try to do this? Is this a bad, but then I go, you can't be fearful,
Yes. Gotta go for it.
Yeah. And honestly, it's only once have I had an actor sort of sabotage me, and they were being dumb and their ego showed up, and I still just used.
How did you turn this? This is actually a really great, valuable lesson, because I've had people write in before and they're like, how do I deal with big egos on set? Or like, and I'm like, ooh, good question.
Yeah. I think I gave it away in the rehearsal. Something happened organically in the rehearsal, which was very exciting. And I was like, oh, didn't even think it just happened. Like an instinct happened and I went with it. And so I thought, oh, this scene's going to be really exciting. And it was a scene, this is something really interesting. It was a scene where the other actor had to give me power. The other actor was way more powerful than I was, like even in stature, but the scene called for that person to give me the power. I had to have the power. And so I think, I'm not going to go in and like chew the furniture, and I just look like a bad actor.
Right.
So when this thing happened, I was like, it was such a wonderful, like happy accident that happened. And I didn't sit on an instinct, and I did something, and it really gave me power. When we went to shoot, we were going to go shoot, the other actor changed all the blocking. And so then took that away. And I was really seething. I was like, wow. And then I remembered this Holly Hunter, Sam Jones.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
So I think Holly Hunter's, every actress should listen to the Holly Hunter, Sam Jones.
So good.
So good. And she said the thing that I just thought of what she said. I was like, WWHD, what would Holly do? Holly said that Jenna Rollins said to her, is it Rollins? Did I say? I always feel like
Gina Rollins, yeah.
Rollins. I always feel like I say her last name wrong, which is like a sacrilege. But she said to Holly, don't complain about anything. Use it.
Oh, I love
Use
that.
it as fuel. And then Holly said something about Sam was asking her about crying, and she said she had to do this crying, like, she would just break down to tears. And she was about to do the scene, and she said that the craft service guy walked by with like crab rangoon or something. Something was like just smelled terrible, and everyone's eating, and it's just not like nobody's sort of holding space for like this difficult thing she has to do. And so she just said, instead of being like, what, complaining or doing that, she just used it.
Yes.
And let it hurt her feelings and let it do this thing. And so I thought about that, and I thought, what do I exert all of that, or do I take it and just put it into fuel.
Yes. And use
put
it
into the scene. And I, it sort of gave, the other actor sort of had the rope, and he or she hung themselves on that rope, and the scene ended up getting cut.
Did
all
it?
the nonsense that they did got cut out, and then the scene came. So I'm so glad I didn't chew the furniture or start to try to go to their level.
Go ego to ego, and then
go ego to ego, because then I would have just looked like I would have looked like a bad actor, because I just stayed back. And I just said, okay, you look like the crazy person.
Well, I feel like it's such a dance, and you've done the dance for so long that even little tangible things like this for somebody that's starting, or even 15 years into their career, we come up against certain things where I feel like ego is the biggest killer of creativity. And the one thing that gets activated when you get an audition or you get an offer and you're getting ready to step on set, pressure goes through the roof. So your ego is so activated. I'm so glad that you shared different tips and tricks, because the activation, how do we deactivate that so we can get back into that collaborative, creative experience?
Your ego is your worst enemy.
Yeah.
Fear is your worst enemy. I remember on Talladega, I had to pee, and I was like, and I didn't want to say I had to pee because I didn't want to slow down. Don't be the girl that says they have to pee. And John Riley looked at me and he goes, go pee. You can't be funny if you're cold or you have to pee. And it was such a silly thing. I know that sounds dumb.
No, it's not dumb at all.
I never, if I have to pee, I don't care about being the good girl. If they have to hold it, I have to urinate.
Yep.
And as silly as it sounds, he's right. Because you're not in your body. You're sitting there going, I have to pee, I have to pee, I have to pee. And so unless the scene is the character has to pee and I'm using real life to shoot you know what I mean? Or but this wasn't, I couldn't be funny in a scene with Sacha Baron Cohen and John and Will at a racetrack. You asked something about Melissa. So with God's Favorite Idiot, I did not have to audition. I got a call. A friend of mine was directing most of them and show running. And his name is Michael McDonald. He's a wonderful improvisational actor. He taught at the Groundlings. He was on Mad TV. I mean, he's to me, a
improv god.
And so Michael has always been a very big advocate of mine. And I met him having drinks, and I think I made him laugh. And then Ben and Melissa were producing the show called Nobodies for their friends. And he said, would you come do the show? We don't have a lot of money, but I think it's a fun part for you. And I was like, yes. Yeah. And
for Nobodies, you said yes.
For Nobodies. Yeah. Cause it was on TV Land or something, and they were just doing this, they were slapping it together, but they treated me amazing. And he's right. I had so much fun, and creatively, it was a joy to go to work. And it was a joy to work with those three actors. They wrote me a great part. Michael was a wonderful director. And one day I got to be in a scene with Melissa. I didn't really have anything to do. I think I ushered her into a scene, but I didn't have to really act with her. But I just was like, oh, I just had a master class watching Melissa McCarthy improv.
Yeah.
And then I remember Michael was like, I'm going to go to Australia and do the show. And it was pandemic. I think if it hadn't been pandemic, I probably wouldn't have gotten the show, because I think a lot of actors didn't want to travel or didn't want to do stuff. And that luck of probably somebody way more famous than me not wanting to travel. He called me on a Saturday. He said, I'm going to send you something. Would you want to go to Australia? And I was like, is this right? Yeah.
During COVID, you're like, hold on a second. Are we traveling?
Yeah. And then I was like, I get to go to Australia, and it's with Ben and Melissa to start. Yeah, please send.
And to play Satan.
And he said, and you play Satan. And I was like, I don't think I have to read it. I think it's just going to be a hard yes. Read it. So he sent me he said, you come in episode 4. And so I was like, all right. And I read it, and it was kind of like, I remember feeling like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, because it was such a great part. And again, like the minute I read it, I just had like, I think I just connected, like my brain started, I was like, oh, she's like Tracy Flick from Election. What if Satan was this? And like, that was like, you know, I just had all of this, like, I knew who she was. I knew, because when you play a villain, and I've played like sort of villainous people, but I think I make them, I like
Likeable.
like likable in a way, a likable villain. I always find like if you can make someone laugh, then they root for you. And you have to find like, just, you know, going in to be like, I'm playing a bad guy. Well, bad guys don't think they're bad.
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
And that is the problem. Like, they think they're right. They think they have, they just, you know, they don't think they're not judging themselves. So the minute you start judging a character in that way, you can't. Or like if a director, like somebody came up to me just recently and they said something. Oh, I was in my Hamlet class. The teacher said something, and I was like, oh no, don't say that. Don't. Like I said, my mother. I said, well, my mother's a whore, because Hamlet, I'm playing Hamlet. And he went, oh, I hate that word. And I went, my mother's a whore. She married my father's brother. He's been dead a month. Like that's what Hamlet thinks. So like, I was like, please don't put your judgment on something that's bringing me to life creatively. So I think like, don't, as an actor, like, just like, I don't think saying like, I'm the bad guy, because then you're going to start making
choices at something versus in something.
Yeah.
And I then we're all out of it, which is like the crux of that ego thing again, right? Ego is, oh, I know how this goes. Oh, I know how a bad guy is.
Yeah. And look at Lex Luthor. Like if you look at like the original Lex Luthor, Gene Hackman he's making the world a better place.
Yes. And
you know what?
Yes.
And he never, he's like the greatest bad guy. The foils is that he has like Ned Beatty, who's an idiot. He has Mrs. What's her name? Something Bacher or something, like that woman beside him. He lives in the subway, but the subway, he doesn't live in the bottom. This is the best real estate in New York City. Look what I have. Like, he's just shining up a turd all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I think like, I also like constantly like steal from people who are much better than I could ever be, people I aspire to be. Like, I just constantly like just take, because I'm not reinventing the wheel. People have done.
I don't think anybody is, right? We're borrowing and stealing from all creatives and
I know, but I think that I think actors forget to do it. It's like them saying, I don't want to say I coach with anybody.
Exactly. I think that my instrument's different than yours, right? So even if I beg, borrow, and steal from you, it's not going to look the same on my instrument. So I just love studying technique of camera, technique of other people's experiences, life lived, different ideas. And I think that's what's so compelling, that I love doing the show and just even getting to dive deep into your career for the last 3 days. You just calling back, like, talk about making everything a shiny turd, like taking a turd and making it shiny. You've played a lot of great villains. Your instrument is so strikingly beautiful. And I think a lot of actresses, when you're strikingly beautiful, can have a short-lived shelf life, or you can take things, you've taken some roles that on paper you'd be like, oh, okay, could be just furniture here, and breathe such life into them that's what's so magnetic. And you being so excited and interested in what you do and how you do it makes us as the audience so excited and interested.
Well,
right?
I think you can't take a job unless it inspires you. So Sam was doing this movie, It was called Don Verdeen. And Jared Hess, who did Napoleon Dynamite, directed it. And we used to have also like this 3-week rule before pandemic where we'd never be apart more than like 3 weeks. And so he was going to go to Salt Lake, and Jared called Sam and said, do you think Leslie would play this part? It's like a nothing part. And he's like, I don't know. I mean, it's not really a big part. And I said, let me see it. And they had no money and whatever. And then I read it, and I remember I talked to Jared and I said, you promised me I can sing that song. There was a song that she sings, and I have a terrible voice, but I was like, you promised me. And he was like, yeah, I will not take the song away from you. And I was like, I'll do it. And I got to play with Danny McBride. And so for me, I was like, getting to work with Danny would be like I think when you get to work with great actors, and especially in comedy, for me, like, it's like graduate school. So to me, I was like, oh, I'm going to go to the AP class and I'm going to watch a really brilliant actor who I really respect and who's now become a very close friend of ours. I'm going to get to see him work. And I sort of like, it's like, that movie seems really silly, but I'm really proud of like what we did. But I remember with the costume fitting, like it was all the Nicki Minaj collection from like Kmart, which it's so silly, but it was like all of this like but like in my mind, I just had a point of view of who this woman was and how seriously she took her job and how much she loved Danny, and getting to sing this song about being the good wife and how it's all a woman's fault and she turned into a pillar of salt. And it's like, it's so ridiculous, but it was like the greatest couple weeks spent. And somebody probably would have been like, I remember my agents were like, why are you doing this? And I said, this is like, and it's like a masterclass. And I got to work with Amy Ryan. So I would just sit in scenes because I think Amy Ryan is
unbelievable.
So brilliant. She's so brilliant. And getting to watch her work and was like also just like joyous, and getting to watch Sam work in that aspect, because I sort of see it, I see him as he's doing his homework on stuff, right, but like getting to see him in a scene, and it was just like so fun. So I think I don't really take a job. I can't take a job just to take a job. I
love that you're a perpetual student of the human condition. No, I love that. And I, every time I sit down and I interview somebody, I always love to see what they bring forth, what their experience has been in this artistic journey. We learn a lot by talking about auditions, because nobody talks about the auditions. We talk about the 1%. We talk about, oh my God, you won this Academy Award. I'm like, oh, really? I would like to know when you fell down, like, and how you picked yourself back up. You being a perpetual student of the craft, I feel like is something that is lost in the 500 interviews that I have done, where people talk about it a little bit, but it's not the foundation. And you being such a student, I mean, why I have 5 pages of notes, it's a constant evolution. I feel like once you slipped into comedy, once Talladega Nights came, then it was like, it looked like a nice juggling act of like, okay, I'll do comedy. Okay, I'll step over here. You've been able to breathe life into some characters that would have probably stayed real flat on the page if they were hired for what was on the page. So watching your instrument work and knowing that you're constantly fueling it with more ideas and keeping it alive invigorates me so much as another artist. So really thank you for sharing it, just even a glimpse into your process as a student, as an artist, as just a human having this experience.
Thank you. That's a very nice thing for you to say. I think also too, like, I fuck up all the time. Like usually I come home from work and I'm like, oh, God, you missed that. And instead of beating myself up, well, I usually sort of flame myself for a good hour or so and just sit there and go, oh, why didn't you do that? Why'd you sit on that? You sat on that intention. But if there's something that some aspect of something I wanted to try, I'm like, put it back in the tool chest and try to find another spot in the script to try to work that, to try to like show that facet of that character. Because sometimes, you know, you do all the work and then, you know, some days you're the, you know, some days you're the fly, some days you're the windshield or whatever.
Yes. Yes.
You know, and some days it just doesn't, it's just like timing doesn't work, or it's just like Mercury's in retrograde and nothing's going the way it's meant to go. And I also like, I like structure, and I mean, I like the chaos once they yell action, but I like to be prepared. And so I think I need to work on being more fluid at changing. And so like that's always fun. You asked about Melissa. So like, I think it was like I like came out of quarantine, and my first day I had to work with her, and I was in this 1950s costume, and I have to come out, and she's like she is like a Jedi.
Yeah.
Like, she is
on.
Facile is like, that doesn't feel quick enough for what is happening. But she's also, and Bennett included, are so, and I've been very lucky in comedy. I've had the most incredible, I really can't I haven't had any bad experience. Like in comedy, I haven't had anybody be like, you're a dope, or bad idea. And I've never had anybody be like that. So I'm really grateful for that. But they are even especially collaborative, and like, if you're like, well, I had this idea, and she's like, yeah, well, maybe what about this? And then you start to see the ping pong happen. So we had this scene, and I want to be clear, I hadn't been acting, it'd been like COVID. I was on set, and I looked down, and I was like, get your shit together. You're playing Satan. I had to like I had hot dogs. I had to throw hot dogs at her or something. And I'm like shaking, and I have like this 1950s costume, and I'm supposed to wheel out stuff. And Melissa had an idea, and talk about somebody not sitting. She was like, this doesn't look 1950s. No, we're in Australia. So 1950s American food is very different than probably what Australians think. But like, I remember she changed the tablecloth, and she had them change the food and all this stuff. And she's in there moving stuff. Like, she's very do it yourself, and she's crafty as all get out. But this one idea she had, she didn't sit on it. And within like 10 minutes, the whole scene elevated into a different, like just from the set, the props. And then I saw her bright idea ignite with like, you know, they were scared. They were like, well, I don't know if I have a gingham thing, or I don't know. But they all sort of like started rising to the occasion and like pulling in this crazy food. And then they started like, maybe you start with this. And they just started flooding me with crazy descriptions of food. And I was like, oh, maybe it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. And then I wanted to have a panic attack. And then I was like, well, fuck it. So what if you fuck it up? And then I think it's such a funny scene, because it just became in the doing of like, I've made you the prettiest spread. I'm making you, this is Shangri-La.
Yes.
How could you say no to me? But I just loved watching, I don't know, her stepping into the, like, her creative light and never sort of dimming it to be like her ideas that were coming in, that she never apologized, like, oh, I don't mean to. It was like, here's this idea. And it was because it was a great idea. Let's just make it happen. And it was so exciting that I was like, it inspired me to step up, to like rise up to her, to try to be anywhere close to the sun that is Melissa McCarthy. And it was really, it was like one of those moments, like when McKay said, don't sit on an intention. It could lead to something good. It was kind of the same thing with Melissa, and watching her sort of unapologetically be creative
And claim that space.
and claim that space and claim it in such graciousness and kindness, but also ignited, it inspired. I remember watching the set deck start to get inspired by it. Once they got past their fear of like, do I have it? Then they started getting really fun and creative, and the shit they were putting marshmallows in and cherries on top of. I mean, they literally glazed. I think they took like tequila and mixed sugar in it and made a tequila glaze over Spam or something. It was so funny looking. And I was like, it was just amazing. It didn't have to make sense, but it was just like ridiculous and perfect. And I think when fear wants to start driving my bus, and the little girl part of me who strives for perfection and keeping it, square and in control, because I like control because my life feels so out of control. It like makes me feel safe.
I understand this.
Remember, I've picked a job that literally is never consistent, never can be like, it's like always pulling the rug out, from underneath me. But I chose it for some reason. So I think I chose it to really remind myself to lean into fearlessness. And so when you're around somebody like Melissa, it just really ignites.
I can't wait to see this. When I saw that you were playing Satan, I just got to play God in January. I was like, but Satan is a whole nother world.
I know, but that to me, it's more scary to play God. It's so like Satan, Satan has, it's really fun to be like, that's hard.
It was an interesting, but kind of the same way in where it was just, I played her as Mother Nature. I played her as mother who gives. I played her very feminine. I feel like you haven't seen a very feminine, but again, I think it's that fearlessness. I went in, I made some really strong choices that we'll see how it all pans out.
Oh my God, exciting. That reminds me, Terry said something when we were working on Satan. So funny when you said Mother Nature. There was a Mazzola. He used this reference. He said there's a Mazzola. There used to be like a Mazzola when they went from like butter to margarine. I guess in the 70s, there was this ad where it was a woman playing Mother Nature. And it was like all these elephants running through wildlife. And then it was like, don't mess with Mother Nature. And it was this powerful woman being Mother Nature. And it was like, don't fool Mother Nature, essentially, with this fake butter or something. I don't know. But he used it as a reference. And I thought, what is Terry talking about? And then I saw the commercial. I found it. And I was like, oh. The power of this woman and this mother, like, you're God. You're very powerful.
Very powerful. And Satan, very powerful. And again, how everybody wants to hate Satan. And I'm excited to see your version come to life. That's Netflix. Does that come out? That's July 15th. June 15th.
Yeah.
Leslie, I can't wait to see it. And I need to have you back because I have so many other questions to dive deeper into, so much more.
Thank you for being so kind. I was really scared about doing this. I don't know why.
Oh my God, no. And I wanted to tell Bethany, I have like 20 more minutes, but I have to run to another interview. But maybe we could truncate it in before we release it or somewhere in here. But you were such an open vessel of honesty. And I feel like that's even more magnetic for artists that are coming up behind you, alongside you, in hopes of working with you someday. Thank you for being that vulnerable, open person about what we do so that we can be more open and accepting.
And be inclusive too. And so I find that, what I think is interesting. I've done some movies with like younger kids and they're so wonderful and they're so cool, like younger, they're so powerful. They're like, they just own their shit. They're like 5 auditions in a day. I remember I used to have that same thing, but they're putting themselves on tape and they're really bold and bright. But I remember saying to a couple of them, like, where did you study? And they're like, oh, I don't want to mess. Like there's something that they think if they go to school that it's going to mess
with their
with
talent,
the
your
natural
talent.
thing that they have. And it's true, I get it. But I also think like, you know, I don't know if Joaquin Phoenix trained, but like, he's like magical. Like Joaquin is like that. That's like something that is like from the solar system. That is a star that's not of this earth. But I think that like, I think there's sort of an onus on studying. I think there's a lot of bad teachers out there, but if you find a great teacher, it's always good to study. It's always good to reflect. It's always good to, you know, treat every piece of material that comes down. Nobody thinks they're writing a piece of shit. They think they're writing, you know, Clifford Odets. They think they're writing, you know, Arthur Miller. This is, you know, my, you know, like they think they're doing something, you know what I mean? So
Absolutely.
I think it helps you when you start to work on all pieces of material.
It definitely does. It so much does. Leslie,
It's really nice to talk to you.
it was so nice to talk to you. Thank you.
I'm so sorry I was late.
It's okay. Please come back. Please come back. I'm going to bother Bethany about it and we can figure out some more holes. But again, thank you so much. I can't wait for you've got a lot of good things. And I can't wait to play with you on set. Have fun. Have so much fun on this one. I cannot wait to see what you pull together with Laura and Kristen and that show.
Janny.
Alice and Janny. I mean,
I don't know. And they're talking about Carol Burnett, which I don't know if it's going to happen, but I kind of don't have words for that. But if it happens, yeah.
About a full circle moment. Talk about a full circle moment.
That's a real full circle. But you know, and then Tate Taylor is
Tate Taylor's a dream. A dream. Yeah. You're in such beautiful, wonderful hands that I can't wait for you to feel like you're jumping on the diving board. You're ready.
I work with Terry on today, Saturday, Sunday. I coach with him, so it'll start to, you know.
It will. It will.
Fun. The research part is fun. I just wish I had like 2 more extra weeks.
I get it. Yes. Yes.
Okay. I can't wait to see
Best
your
of
job.
luck. Thank you. I'll talk soon.